Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Spirit Walking with Asa Hoffman. And thank you all for being patient. It has been a little bit of a Mercury retrograde kind of a day. We're getting ready for our retrograde going on. Plus, we have a whole lot of other planets that are in retrograde right now. So we are tripping our way down the road. But this is going to be an incredibly interesting evening because I have my very good friend and soul brother on with me tonight, Adam Robinson. If you read it about him, he is the co-founder of the Princeton Review. He has written the only test prep book to hit the New York Times bestseller. He's a lifetime chess master. He is a wizard of global markets and just an amazing, inspiring human being with just so much love in his heart that he shares so freely and effortlessly, which makes him one of my favorite people to talk to. Thank you, Adam, for being here.
Thank you. Should I unmute?
Oh yeah, you are. We can hear you. So.
Oh, you can. Great.
All good. Yeah, we're getting through the technical parts. Anyway, how have you been, Adam, through the last couple of months? I know it's been a strange time for all of us being sent home, so to speak. Although I do know that you go in very well into that creative space and have that ability to sort of go into a germination period at times like this. But how has this particular period been for you?
Well, you know, by nature, I'm an introvert. So for one, and the thing is, I expected this. I've been expecting this, not in this particular manifestation, but it was a matter of time that the house of cards that is the world we were in, the dream that we were in, that we woke up, because this is actually reality, and I think people were living in a dream. So my particular skill set predisposes me to understand this world and to navigate it. So I'm concerned for the world, but for me this is. Yeah, well, we have lots to talk about.
Well, when you say that, so when you say, but this is the real world and not the dream world, to what do you refer?
That the world has been predicated on assumptions, many things, truths, I say truths with air quotes, that people have taken for granted about the world that aren't true. And we'll go into that in many ways. And so the world that they assumed was true, that they were sleepwalking, I was going to say sleepwalking through,
right,
was not the actual world. And so that's what they're being exposed to now, that everyone is being exposed to. So yeah, to reality. To what truly is. And they're realizing the extent to which things that they had assumed were true were not. For example, even in everyday reality, when I extend one foot in front of the other, I expect it to be met by a sidewalk. Right? I assume that there's going to be a sidewalk to meet my foot. And sometimes, you know, we step off a curb unwittingly and we're surprised. Oh, and this world is much like that. People have essentially stepped off a curb, a really big curb, and they're bewildered and disoriented. And by things that, again, this is a phrase that you hear a lot, that don't make sense, and we will make sense of it. On November 6th last year, Ray Dalio, who runs Bridgewater, the world's largest hedge fund, smart fellow, wrote a blog piece entitled "The World Has Gone Mad and the System is Broken." This is pre-COVID, he was saying this. And the thing is that it hadn't gone mad, actually. What he was saying betrayed his worldview that wasn't lining up with the world he was observing. So he had particular expectations about the way the world ought to behave, in particular financial markets. And the financial markets were behaving differently from what his model, his awareness built up over decades said it should be doing. And so he said, therefore, the world has gone mad. Instead of saying, maybe I ought to take another look at my models. And when scientists encounter an anomaly, it's an invitation to reconsider the theory. And sometimes we can refine the theory. Sometimes the theory has to be totally overhauled. And that's where we are. You know, a guy named Kuhn, forget his first name right now, wrote a book called The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. And he said that theories are overturned. First, there's an anomaly. And everyone goes, okay, that's just one anomaly. And but then the anomalies accumulate. And it reaches a point where the scientific community can no longer make allowances, simply too many anomalies.
Right.
And then the theory is overturned completely, right? Like with Einstein, first with relativity, and then he created general relativity, and same with quantum mechanics. So this world we've had anomalies that I'm surprised people weren't more surprised about. You know, speaking of quantum mechanics, Niels Bohr once famously said that after giving a lecture on quantum mechanics, if you aren't utterly confused by what I just said, you weren't paying attention. And one of the things that's astonished me about the world is that people weren't more astonished by what was going on.
So we have a thing right now where people are really reacting to COVID, and a lot of people have talked about it as a global reset. You know, there have been different perspectives on that, and as we're coming out of it, you know, I wonder if people have still recognized even an anomaly, much less the series of anomalies that are happening, and the need to reevaluate the world that we live in.
Yeah, well, alas, people are attributing to COVID. The COVID is actually not an anomaly. It is an inevitable consequence of the way we've structured the modern world for at least the last 75 years, since at least the end of World War II. It was an inevitable consequence. Gandhi said, there must be more to life than making it faster. And that's what we've done. We've gotten really good at technology, making everything faster. And one of the consequences of that, and there are multiple consequences, but one is communication. We travel around much more than we used to. So do diseases. And so it's not just that. There are other reasons why COVID was an inevitable consequence of the way we have been living in the modern world. The modern world, and we'll get into all of this, has been structured so that it requires growth at all costs. Growth at all costs. And, you know, even, you know, you hear economists talking about the gross domestic product, GDP, and, you know, they refer to growth, the growth rate of the economy, as if that were the only thing. And, you know, not happiness or fulfillment or connection. And in fact, these things have been sacrificed. They've been jettisoned in the name of growth. And it's left the world, and will, again, in the sense that I'm introducing many topics, we're gonna.
Well, you can keep going right on in, because this is where we want to go. And a lot of these people have been listening to the show for a bit, so they're familiar with some of these ideas. They're not necessarily familiar with your brilliance around this idea. So feel free. I love where you're headed.
So this is so COVID and the financial crisis were, again, inevitable consequences of the way we've structured the modern world. And so what's actually gone on, this isn't a financial crisis, this is actually a spiritual crisis. And so I'm gonna have to layer in a few concepts to give people a framework for understanding the world through my lens. So everything human is an answer to a question, to one or more questions. So for example, I'm drinking water here, sparkling water. It's an answer to a question. What can I drink that will slake my thirst and be devoid of calories and chemicals and other things? That's the answer. Sometimes I drink iced coffee. That's a different question, right? What can I drink that will give me a little pep? This location, I happen to be in Los Angeles now, West Hollywood, was an answer to a question. Where can I be in the world during this time, which is a congenial setting while I wait to see where things sort out? This location is an answer to a question. Right? Everything is an answer to a question. The glasses you're wearing are an answer to a question, right? How can you see better, right? Glasses is one way. You could squint also. That's another answer. An answer you choose not to employ. So everything human is an answer to a question. I say that for a reason. The entire world is the sum total of all the answers we've been able to come up with as a species to satisfy human needs. And it's left us in great pain. And this isn't an opinion of mine. We can do a Google experiment. And in fact, I'm going to invite your listeners to go to use their cell phones or their laptops and go to the Google search bar. Right? We've done this, you and I. And about a year and a half ago, I was interested in writing a little tweet about people always getting ready to do things without doing them, just jumping right in. And so I was curious what people wanted to learn how to do. So I go to Google and I type in, how can I learn to? So I'm going to do that right now. How can I learn to? So if you go to the Google, it has to be the Google search bar, and don't hit enter. You just hit, you just let it autofill. So how can I learn to? So here, how can I learn to? And the number one response is love myself. Number two is how can I learn to sing, speak Spanish, sew, code, draw, ride a motorcycle, play the piano. But the number one thing they wanted to learn about, how can I learn to love myself? Think about that. We've got a world that until a few months ago, people thought was doing pretty well. US stock market, all-time highs. The United States economy at record low unemployment, so record high employment. Things look pretty great. And then 1 month later, between February 19th and March 23rd, global equities lost more than a third of their value. Small cap stocks lost, on average, almost half. In 4 weeks, in a month, just gone, trillions of dollars gone. And people were, what the heck was that all about? And so we've constructed a world built on a lot of debt that's left people not loving themselves. And I can prove even more than that. I was so saddened to see that people were turning to Google for how can I learn to love myself? Then I went, oh, what are they feeling? So I typed in, why do I feel so? And this is something that people can do. Why do I feel so? Okay. Number one response, why do I feel so tired? That's a euphemism for depression. Number one response, why do I feel so tired? In other words, why am I depressed? Men in particular, but also women to a lesser extent, but when they are depressed, they're not aware that they're depressed. For them, oh, I'm not depressed. I just don't have any energy. I don't feel like doing anything. And they reach for a Red Bull or whatever, or a motivational seminar, but they're actually dealing with depression. So why am I depressed? Number two response, why do I feel so alone? Number three, why do I feel so bloated? There are a lot of eating disorders coming from feeling depressed and anxious. Number four, why do I feel so sad? Depressed. Number five, why do I feel so weak? Depressed. Number six, dizzy, nauseated. Number eight, why do I feel so empty?
Yeah.
Which is it's existential depression. So I think we've constructed a world that not only has grown really well, grown very fast. We've created all these technologies. We've gotten really good, really efficient at making people feel depressed, lonely, and lost. And worse, I said, oh my gosh, what do they think about the world? So I type in then, and again, people can do this. Then I type in, why is everyone else so? Why is everyone else so? Now the first one is why is everyone else so? The first one is bad at eating. It's actually from a Parks and Recreation episode. So, but okay, these are the rest. Why is everyone else so happy, skinny, successful, pretty, talented, lucky, perfect? So you think about that. You've got a world that we've created to answer questions that have left people feeling alone, depressed, and lost, and thinking everyone else is perfect, skinny, happy, and having the time of their lives. And you know, it's really tragic. And so, so the financial markets are, again, what we've seen is actually a spiritual crisis. And, you know, since the end of World War II, we've gone into massive amounts of debt. Didn't start off as massive amounts. It started off as the American dream, right? I want what mom and dad had. I just want more of it, right? They had a home, I want two homes. I want two of everything. And I'm willing to go into debt to get it. And that's what we've done as individuals, and as corporations, and as governments, as countries. We've accumulated massive amounts of debt, and to buy things we didn't really need, and have left us at the end of the day feeling depressed, lonely, and lost. And yeah.
No, go ahead if you've got more to say.
I got tons more to say.
Well, and I was just going to say, and it's, you know, it leaves us with, you know, the payoff for buying things and getting them is often short-lived, but the debt lives a long time. So we're owing energy on things that we've lost our connection to very quickly because they aren't of the heart, right? They're things. And so the way that things feed us becomes diminished very quickly. And then things that are more long lasting, like our heart, our relationships, our love, aren't really fed often, or we aren't able to feed them because we're so busy chasing that debt and trying to figure out how we're going to do it so we get to that next place. So it sort of keeps us on the hamster trail.
Yes, it's, you know, very well said. It's a hamster you know, little wheel of addiction. you know, because people are actually looking for connection and fulfillment and love, because that's actually what they want. The answers that they're coming up with are things, you know, people think, oh, well, if I get enough money, or if I get enough success, then I'll be okay.
So what do you think the question was that they were asking that led to a world that's created this? You know, because this really is, was initially a lot the American dream that wound up becoming the global dream in many ways.
Yeah.
The American dream. So I'm not saying the question, because there's lots of questions that have been asked throughout, you know, humanity's existence that have led to lots of challenging things that we're still dealing with. But pinpointing this American dream piece that's become the global dream, what's that? What was the question do you think that they were answering? Do you know?
Well, you know, two things happened. Well, the first is we were coming off a depression and World War II. So it's, I mean, in a sense, you can see that people would just want to just like, okay, like you get to throw off the yoke of a depression and throw off the yoke of a world war. So, but it took on its own life. And this, you know, even the economists are just so divorced from human beings. You know, they refer to people as consumers. I mean, think about that. To me, it's obscene, truly obscene, to refer to souls as consumers. It's just like, just mouths to be, appetites to be satisfied or not. And so, you know, to go back to the hamster thing, it sets up an addictive quality, because people think, well, if I get enough Instagram likes, or if I rise to a certain, you know, success level in my career, or if I get enough money, then I'll be okay. But because it doesn't work, they think, oh, I just need more of it. You know, I thought if I got $1 million, I would be okay, but I still feel kind of empty. So I better get 10 million. Then they get 10. And by the way, in pursuing that race, of course, you're leaving behind your real needs unmet.
Right.
So, and people just become increasingly divorced. You know, I last year on Father's Day, I was in, I live in Tribeca, although now in West Hollywood, and Tribeca. And the day before Father's Day, I was at a restaurant, and I saw a father and his son. I guess his son was, I don't know, 6. Seemed cute. That's really sweet. Father and son together, having a meal together. I guess giving mom a chance to sleep late on Saturday morning. And both of them, I kid you not, had their noses buried in their phones. Both of them. You know, I mean, this father was like this, the son really a couple feet away. Listen, if there's a cute dog 2 feet away from me, I'm like dropping everything and playing with the dog. You know, and here's a dad with his son, and think about it. The son is modeling the father.
Yep.
And by the way, technology is very dangerous because technology has been created to hijack our attention. And it does so by serving up a world that amplifies our emotions, especially emotions of fear and anger. Because if I see a headline, if one were to see a headline that makes them angry, they're going to click on that. Or one that gets them afraid. So the internet, again, has been designed to get people to pay attention and to respond with clicks. And it does so with terrifying efficiency. And it's like a virus that maps to each person and figures out exactly what it needs to do to the individual in front of it to keep him or her arrested.
So do you think at a core, there's a Machiavellian plan at work behind technology and behind, or do you think it's sort of a side effect of something that we created? And of course there are those taking advantage of it, but you know, where do you think that lands?
So I'm going to be coy and not answer that, because I don't have to answer it in the following way. You know, in legal cases, in the common law tradition, there's something called obiter dicta. And so judges are supposed to settle the case on as few legal doctrines as possible, and anything else they say is deemed obiter dicta, like didn't really have to say that, wasn't required to settle the case. So you asked me, is it Machiavellian? Like, in other words, are people behind the control or not? And so I'm going to punt on that one and say it doesn't really matter, because the consequence is the same. And it's because you've got algorithms that train themselves on each individual. So that's what they do. They're neural networks, and they will learn very quickly what it takes to get Asa Hoffman to click on an article. And so it learns very quickly who you are and how you look at the world. And I don't think individuals, you know, can do that. So I don't think it's any like Machiavellian in the way that, but there's certainly corporations that profit from it.
Right. Well, I'm happy with that punt, because it still goes in a direction I want to go, which is basically I've listened to other interviews with you, and I've heard you say that that we live in a world that's been created, and that if we want to change the world, and it's been created by our thinking. So if you want to change the world, you have to change the thinking in it. And so I have two questions there. You know, if you could, one, expand on that, but also number two, you know, how do we change our thinking when we're also being, you know, the thinking that we currently have is being reinforced by the technology, by these algorithms.
Good.
So those are two questions.
Okay. So first, Einstein said that the world out there is the product of our thinking. And to change the world, you can't change the world until you change the thinking that led to it. By the way, that's true for us as a species. It's also true for us as individuals. My world, Adam's world, is the product of my thinking. And to change the world, I have to change my thinking. And there are only two levers that we have to change thinking. You know, thanks, Albert, for that insight, but you didn't actually elaborate. So I will. So there are only two levers. You have only two. If you want to change thinking, you have only two levers. Either change the questions people are asking. And when I say change, I should be more precise. You can invite people to consider new questions. You can only invite them. You can't change your thinking, but I can invite you to consider new questions, or I can invite you to consider more inspired answers to the questions you're already asking. And those are your only two levers if you want to change things. If you want to change people's thinking. In the world right now, it's gotten very polarized. Really, it's a centrifugal world. Everything is flying apart, right? Centrifugal energy, kaboom. And when it comes together in anger, right? Yeah. And anger is not an invitation for someone to consider a new question. You know, Gandhi did not say, don't make things faster. He just said, there must be more to life than making things faster, which in a sense is a question. Isn't there more to life than making things faster? And so if you want to change the world, you can only invite people to consider new questions or new answers. That's true even on an interpersonal basis, you know? And people need to get real clear on the questions that people are asking and the answers that they're coming up with. And I say people, corporations need to do this. Certainly our political leaders need to do this. And probably we will touch on things that involve politics and today. And I am strictly agnostic. I am Switzerland. So the statements I make involve the world. I'm not here to advocate a political view one way or the other. So how do you change your thinking when you've got the internet designed to capture you, right? And whatever you think, Asa, the internet will serve up. I don't know if you know this, but if you type in, say, vacations in Europe, and I type in exactly the same query, your responses will be different from mine.
Yes.
Right? Based on it may discover that Asa likes nature. Yeah. And may discover that the internet knows, the algorithms know that Adam likes cities, especially with old cities. Right? So the vacations it serves up to you are going to be different from the options it serves up to me. And so one way to fight the confirmation bias, which is inherent, first, it's inherent in human beings, but it's amplified by the internet, right? It's just going to confirm anything you think. And so don't go to the internet expecting to have your mind changed. Not at all, right? It's just going to amplify whatever. If you go to the internet with a question and you think an answer, you're going to discover that you were right. Right? That the internet convinces everybody that he's right, he or she. And so the internet is a polarizing force that makes each individual sure that he's right. Say he. I'm just going to use the pronoun he, so I keep going he and she. Yeah. So just going to say he. And yes, in my world, which is predicting financial markets, yep. For the heads of very large hedge funds, by discipline, I have to train myself sort of anti-confirmation bias. So whenever I have a thesis, say interest rates are headed lower, and I have a logic for that, then I set up, what do I need to see to change my view? In other words, what would I need to see in the world to let me know that interest rates were going to head higher? I need to do that at the beginning. Otherwise, I'm just going to suffer from confirmation bias. It's very, very, very hard to see the world for what it is. It sounds vague, but I will tell you that almost everybody literally is looking at a world that's very different from what they think. Very, very different.
So just shifting gears here, because I really want to get to some of how we engage what you're talking about and how we actually engage that as individuals, and obviously a part of it is exposing ourselves maybe to inspirational ideas or things that open up our own hearts and drive us. I mean, there's, you know, I firmly believe connecting with our creativity is so important.
Yeah.
For individuals, connecting with nature in some form and remembering that we're nature and that we live in the laws of nature to some degree, you know. But I also want to actually go into a totally different direction, which is that, you know, you had a presentation you were doing that you sent off to your friend Warren Buffett, who he said, this is amazing information that needs to get out in the world. And I don't know if that's exactly what he said, but something to that effect that led you to writing a book. And it really covers the topic. It's how not to be stupid. And I think the title and the thinking, there we go, how not to be stupid. But I think the title and I think the information, you know, one of the things it captures is, you know, how we think when we see something, when there's a lesson that we learn, we often think, you know, oh, they were stupid. You know, we don't necessarily think we were stupid. And it's one of the ways that we get sort of caught in some traps. So anyway, I want to sort of toss this to you to whatever level you can share a little bit about how not to be stupid, and some of your thoughts around this would be great. And in relation to what we're talking about.
So actually, it's a very profound topic. So stupidity, when I wrote that book, it took me a month just to define stupidity, which is overlooking or dismissing conspicuously crucial information, right? It's crucial information, so you really better pay attention. Like there's a lot at stake if you don't notice it. It's conspicuous, it's right in front of you, either literally or metaphorically, it's at hand, available. And either you overlook it, or you notice it and go, whatever. You don't pay any attention to it. And so so Buffett's endorsement for my book, which is it's not out yet, but I'm going to release it soon. He said, how not to be stupid is loaded with good ideas and appropriate warnings. And I want to emphasize the word warnings. And this is really important in the world right now with everything that we're doing. Everything right now, on a personal level, and you know, on a national level and a global level. So Hegel said we learn from history that we don't learn from history, but he was actually profoundly wrong. It's much worse than that. We learn the wrong lessons, which is way worse, because what happens in the world is people observe something and they dismiss it. But worse, in dismissing it, they extract the wrong lesson. And especially around stupid things. So they will observe an action that they think is stupid. And basically, they will metaphorically roll their eyes and go, look at that, that's so stupid. And not extracting the lesson. And I can demonstrate that, and I will in a few seconds. But instead of asking, how might I do exactly the same thing? So this will blow your mind. So I cite this as an example. 21 years ago, Yo-Yo Ma forgot his cello. Sorry, my bad. I'm giving away the punchline. Yo-Yo Ma was in New York City, and he was giving a command performance at Carnegie Hall. And you can imagine, after giving a performance, you're emotionally spent, right? It's an artist, you know, really putting his whole heart and soul into his performance. And afterwards, in fact, the next morning, he was running late for an appointment. Yo-Yo Ma in New York. Yo-Yo Ma is not from New York. I say that for a reason. And he was running late for an appointment, and he tosses his big plexiglass cello case containing his $2 million Stradivarius in the trunk, and races to the appointment, gets there in time, and he walks into the meeting, and his friend says, "Hey, Yo-Yo, where's your cello?" Oh, he had forgotten it in the back of a cab. This is 20 years ago, right? Pre-Uber. And, but fortunately he had the little receipt. And so because he's Yo-Yo Ma, the police chief was, notified, the head of the Taxi and Limousine Commission, and, and the mayor of New York, right? Yo-Yo Ma, beloved virtuoso. Let's get this cello back, right? And, they spot the taxi driver in Queens or something, like an hour later. He's totally unsuspecting. He doesn't know that there's a $2 million Stradivarius in his trunk. He forgot about it. A couple of squad cars pull up, and they pop the trunk, and it's there. So Yo-Yo Ma is reunited with his cello. There's a huge punchline coming up for everybody. And so he gives an interview, wants to thank New York City for reuniting him with his cello. And I'm quoting from the New York Times. He said, "I just did something stupid. I was tired from having given a performance the night before, and I was in a rush. I just forgot." Okay. And he totally didn't get the lesson. Now, this is interesting. I have to emphasize for the people listening what a cello means. I said it was worth $2 million. No, that's what it would cost someone if Yo-Yo Ma was willing to sell it. He's never going to sell that. And in other words, someone would pay that to get it, but he's not going to sell it. He's been with that instrument for, I don't know, a couple of decades. It's his life. He knows every fiber, every wood, the grain of every element of that cello. And you and I couldn't tell the difference between that cello and one that was another Stradivarius, but he could. And so virtuosos, I'm saying all this for a reason. Virtuosos refer to their instruments as like their child or a limb. So think about this. Yo-Yo Ma forgot something that was the most important thing in his life. His most important possession, right? He would have been devastated, possibly career ending, if he had lost his cello. Would have been devastated. And yet, he left it in the back of a cab. Now, what lesson, I'm asking you, Asa, and those people listening, we haven't talked about this, have we? You and I? Okay, good. So what lesson do you think he extracted from that event?
Oh, what do I think that he extracted?
Yeah.
Well, I think he said it, that he was tired and stupid.
So what lesson going forward, after all, lesson going forward? What? That's the past. He did that. So
right.
What?
You know what? I don't know. Maybe so if I'm tired and I was stupid, then I better not rush so fast next time.
Right. You would think, right? And you would think that other musicians around the world would have, like this was front page news on the New York Times. Imagine for musicians like Yo-Yo Ma.
Right.
Like Zeus.
Yeah.
Who got his thunderbolt in the back of a cab. That's not the lesson they learned. And I can prove it. It's really fascinating. Now, those people listening now, if you're listening to this, you may think, oh, what relevance does this have for me? I don't have a multi-million-dollar instrument. I don't have anything worth multiple millions that I can carry around with me. And you're already falling into the trap of stupidity. You're thinking, that doesn't apply to me. But it does. So wait, this is really fascinating because I didn't believe it. So a year later, under almost exactly the same circumstances, another world famous virtuoso leaves his cello in a cab right after performing. He knew all about Yo-Yo Ma. I'm forgetting the guy's name right now. He knew all about Yo-Yo Ma. He did exactly the same thing. And by the way, I was so fascinated, then I started to do research. In multiple instances, all of them right after a performance, just like Yo-Yo Ma, all of them were outside their normal environment. They were almost always traveling. All of which factors played in with Yo-Yo Ma. Now, Philippe Quint is a world famous violinist. You know the lesson that he extracted? He knew about all the other musicians. He forgot after a performance in Dallas, flies back to New York, and leaves his $3 million, shoot, it wasn't a Stradivarius, but it was a $3 million, forget the name, violin in the back of a cab. Fortunately, it was recovered. And you know what he said when he was interviewed? This tells you the lesson that he had extracted. He said, you really got to let this land. I didn't think the other guys had lost their instruments. I thought they were publicity stunts.
Wow.
He so couldn't believe that they had actually lost their instruments because he said, well, that would be the end of their career. How could they do that? But he thought that they were publicity stunts. Can you imagine? Even after he himself had done the same thing, he still hadn't extracted the right lesson. So having said all of that, Asa, suppose you were a manager of world famous virtuosos. Their manager. And several of your clients have left their instruments in the back of taxis. One guy left it on an Amtrak train, $2 million violin. It was recovered between New York and DC. It was recovered. What would you tell them all? Like, you're their manager now. What lesson did you, from everything I've told you, and this will astonish you, there's a lesson behind the lesson. What lesson have you learned, and what would you tell them to do? By the way, I'm inviting the listeners to, those of you listening, to think, what would you tell musicians in your care? So I'm asking you, Asa.
Well, I mean, besides the fact that we need to develop some technology so that if they get too far away from their instrument, it buzzes on their hands. They can't leave their instrument. So let's have something created here, because we're talking about millions of dollars and we're in a technological age. But what I would talk to them about is being present, that after the show, you need to be present with your instrument and to realize that you are likely to lose it. And
yes,
that this is not only a possibility, it's a likelihood. And therefore, you must be present through that process and respond to it differently. So,
yes, that's beautiful. And I want to say, Asa, you are one of the wisest people that I know. And I say that because that's the wrong lesson.
Great.
No, this is really perfect. No, by the way, this is really fascinating. Many musicians thought, I better be present. I don't want to be separated from my instrument. That was the conclusion that, shoot, what was his name? David Garrett, world famous violinist. He was in London, he's German, was in London giving a performance at the London Philharmonic. And afterwards, he's very excited. He's going to meet his parents. London weather, being London weather, it was raining. And in his rush to see his parents, he'd forgotten to take off his concert slippers, which are very slippery. And he had created a knapsack, like a custom-made knapsack to keep his violin on him. He's never going to put it down. It's not going to happen to him. So he's racing to meet his parents, and he slips on the marble in the rain, and he falls backwards on his knapsack, crushing his violin.
Oh my God. This is an awful story.
So it's fascinating because even that's not, so notice, he extracted a lesson. I'm not going to be separated from my instrument.
Right.
Wasn't the right lesson. Some people extracted another lesson, and this is a practice. They have what are known as minders. So after a performance, they will pass their instrument over literally to like a trained professional, and their job is just to ensure that that instrument gets to some pre-established location. But
So what's the lesson, Adam?
The real lesson is this, and everyone's overlooked it. If after a performance, when you're tired and in a rush, and these almost always occur when they're traveling, they lost something that would be career ending.
Mm-hmm.
If they could do that, they're in danger. I wouldn't be worried about the instrument. I'd be worried about the musicians themselves. If you could leave a $2 million or $3 million instrument in the back of a cab, I'd worry about that guy stepping off the sidewalk. It's not the instrument that was in peril. They were in peril, right? Think about it. Anyone who could leave an instrument in the back of a cab, something worth several $1 million, and they would be devastated, way more than the money.
And something they love.
Right. In a sense, that would be covered, the money part of it would be covered by insurance, but you can't replace it. It's irreplaceable. The key thing was that they were in danger. The lesson is that in those circumstances, you're in what I call the stupid zone. You're going to do something stupid. For those guys, the stupidity manifested itself as forgetting an instrument. It could easily have just walked into traffic and gotten hit by a cab.
Well, so wait, what's the answer though? So if that's the case, I talked about people talk about getting present, because one of the things that's happened when you're in the stupid zone, you're not present with what's happening. You're in the future, you're in the past, you're in the experience, you're everywhere but here. So
yeah. So what you need
more than that, because you're saying that doesn't answer the question though, or the problem.
So notice everyone extracted the wrong lesson. The focus was all on the instrument. It should have been on the person.
Right.
And the key thing is this: each of the musicians should have said, not, I would never have done what Yo-Yo Ma did. That's actually what each of them thought. Each one of them knew about each successive one, and they said, I would never do that. What the lesson they should have been thinking, under what circumstances might I do something like that? That's really key. And that's the more general lesson in life. We read stories about people doing things.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them horrific, right? Some of them are some of them accidents, some tragedy. Some of them are not so accidental, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we think, oh, even in judging, we say, oh, I would never do that, or I would never, make that blunder.
Or, I hear people say, America would never do that. Talking
Right.
about us in relationship to other countries. And then the next thing you know, we're doing certain things and we discover we're doing them. So, yeah.
The key lesson in history, that's Hegel's saying, we learn from history that we don't learn from history. Really, again, we learn the wrong lesson. We think we would never do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
As a society or as a company or as an individual. When instead, the question we should ask when extracting the lessons from our own lives and the experience that we encounter is, under what circumstances would I do that? maybe not that exact same thing, right? So for example,
maybe that's actually key that you might not do that exact same thing, right?
Oh yeah, like Yo-Yo Ma.
That doesn't mean that we won't get the lesson. So, I also found the one other example, I don't know if we can tell it in a really Cliff Notes version, but I think another one that really illustrates it is the one about the pilots flying with that aircraft. Because that really, it shows the life or death critical of what you're talking about. Could you tell that in a short version or no?
Well, I don't think I could do it in a short version. There's so many other things we could move on to, but the key thing is this, is to realize, you say be present, and here's the thing. Here's the problem with that. You'll think that you're present. You're not. You're in the stupid zone. Again, even thinking, I will be present. Yeah? How do you know? And so that's really the challenge, is that when you're in the stupid zone, I don't know that you can actually be present to the degree that you think you might, unless you've trained yourself to be so. Like rigorously trained yourself.
We have to rigorously train ourselves.
Like meditate every day.
I think humans have to rigorously train themselves to get into the present. Absolutely.
Yeah, but by the way, being present when the situation pulls you out of presence. Yeah. Kind of easy to be present every morning, and you're going to do your meditation or something. Great. Now be contemplative and meditate when someone's screaming, I don't know, obscenities at you. Now be present. So without responding.
So I got two questions. Is the book available? And number two is, in the book, do you give strategies? So if you're telling us there's the stupid zone and being present isn't a good solution, do you within it give strategies for recognizing when you're in the stupid zone?
Well, it'll be ready. I'm releasing it soon, next couple of months. It's not, but yes, I do. One thing is to be aware that when certain factors are present, so for example, actually, this is worth knowing, is it? So there's 7 factors that can put you in the stupid zone. You don't need all 7 factors, but these are the 7 factors. Being outside your normal environment. Look at the world, right? Like if you travel to another city, you're outside your normal environment. This world, everyone's outside of the normal environment, okay? Having a sense of urgency, rushing. By the way, that can be done in a positive way. Like I could be rushing to a birthday party, right? It's not a sense of necessarily of, like I'm scared of something, but a sense of urgency, rushing. Being in the presence of a group, also a big danger. Again, I'm listing 7 things. Those are 3. You don't need all 7. Any 2 or 3, and you're in big trouble. And they're additive. Being in the presence of an authority, like police. Being in the any task that requires intense focus predisposes you to stupidity. Information overload is the 6th. And the last is physical or emotional compromise, stress. All 7 factors are present in hospitals. All 7 factors are present in emergencies, like today's world. So
I was just going to say, I think all 7 factors are the state that the world generally exists in at this point.
Well, right now, yes. So everyone can assume that they're in the stupid zone. Really, that's got to be your starting point. Now, this is important. So one of the things is don't do anything that puts your finances, your reputation, your health or your well-being, or that of people you care about, at risk. So if you look at a medicine bottle, almost all medicine bottles have little warning labels, like prescription medicine, and it says, warning, this medication can affect your mental and physical functioning. If affected, don't operate heavy machinery or drive.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a huge problem with that warning label. They've done multiple studies. No one pays attention to them. 1. 2, if you are affected, you won't know it. You're not going to go, oh, I'm feeling a little woozy. I better not drive. No, you'll go, oh, a little off. Okay, I can still drive. And 3, if you shouldn't be operating heavy machinery or driving, shouldn't be doing a lot of things, right? Don't climb a ladder. Don't sign a contract. Don't go hang gliding. Don't make public statements. Don't tweet or post pictures of yourself. Don't get married. Don't quit your job. There are lots of things you shouldn't do if you're in the stupid zone, not just operating a car, like operating heavy machinery or driving. Right? The label should really say, if you take this medication, don't do anything for 24 hours. And so one is really to recognize that the entire world, including our political and corporate leaders, that everyone's in the stupid zone. And the thing is, they are literally blind to crucial information right in front of them, literally blind. And they're making decisions, though, that have long-term consequences. Really very dangerous.
So what do we do? Well, we're in the stupid zone. You know, if we're all in the stupid zone, we need to create new questions to, come up with new questions to have new answers, to change our thinking, but we're also in this zone where we're not in clear thinking, and you're saying do nothing.
Well,
what do we do?
Okay, well, one is to pause.
And by the way, as you can address that to individuals. There's what we do as a society, but there's also what we do as individuals. So what are we to do as individuals?
Okay, so the first is get someone who's outside the stupid zone.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so for example, if there's a disaster right outside, right out there, and they pull in the experts to the disaster zone, then all the experts, they're also in the stupid zone. You need some people who are outside, one, who are not in the stupid zone, okay? Again, being in the presence of a group or authority puts you in the stupid zone, right? By the way, so these factors, so one is to keep experts, don't let them get together, like in Congress. Don't let them get together, or committees even. Very dangerous. And be careful about authority. And what you need is someone, so for distribute them. And also, you need, say, a devil's advocate, right? You need someone who's taking the other side of things. I used the example before of what would I need to see to change my view, right? I'm actually looking for, so for example, somebody thinks, we should shut down the economy because of COVID. Okay, what would you need to see to tell you you were wrong about that decision? And if you can't answer that question, if you don't know when you're wrong, you certainly don't know when you're right. So, but think about it. What happens is, remember, one of the things about stupidity, I would say if there was one catalyst that really the one thing that almost always tips people into the stupid zone is a sense of urgency. Mm-hmm. So notice everyone is demanding of corporate and political leaders. You got to do something now. I used the example before of the questions people are asking themselves, right? And the answers. A lot of politicians, again, this is apolitical, all politicians, all leaders, one of the questions that they're asking themselves, also true of corporate leaders, how can I appear to be doing something? How can I appear in charge? Right? Till I figure out what the hell's going on. Everyone's asking me to like do something. How can I appear to know what I'm doing? That's a question that they're asking themselves. Not a good question. It's a natural question. And it's a question that arises because of the demands of people. You got to do something right now, right now. No, pause. That's a big one. To pause. When this is something that you need to train yourself to do. And you spoke of presence. And so one thing, there's in Russian sort of tradition, going back centuries, when they go on a long trip, they, a family or an individual, before they walk out of their apartment with their bags, they will sit down, put everything down and sit and do nothing. Say for a minute, not meditate, not do anything, just sit. It's not even for me to sit here quietly and say nothing here, right? Not easy. And in that moment, you're acknowledging you're about to shift your environment. And by the way, if you can't sit still, like, oh, I can't do that right now. You already know you're in the stupid zone, you're rushing. But you have to train yourself to do that. So I would say one thing that people can do is really train themselves to pause before acting.
Yeah, I think that's such an important one. I also, what I heard in what you were saying is not just getting lost in lists of pros and cons and decisions, but actually landing on a decision and asking yourself, what would I need to have a different point of view? You know, what would I need to see to have a different thought here? Because it's a more of a critical way of accessing the thought process, to really think about whether or not something feels like the right decision or not, or to even recognize whether you have clarity on the opposing points. You know, it's actually a way of thinking, you know, where we, instead of adding up a list of things, it's actually really looking at the action. Oh, I'm doing this. What would I need to actually see something different, to make a different decision there?
Right.
So,
and yes.
You know, I think I need to buy a car right now. You know, I'm in the country. What do I think I need to buy a car. I'm going to buy a car. What would I need to see to not do that? Instead of what are the pros and cons of buying a car, you know, and sitting in the list, actually looking at it from a more critical place, that it makes it more dynamic, because you're looking at the polarities of the energy.
Very much. Yes. It's very well put. As you always do, the polarities, you're coming up with an action and then coming up with sort of the opposite polarity and going, okay, well, what would I need to see? Like, I think we should raise taxes, say.
Right.
What would make me say I should lower them?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, and I think personally, I mean, I think of it that way always, because energy, I know if we push any polarity too far in any direction, it's going to get pushed back in the other direction. It's just what's going to happen. It's repetitive throughout history, and it's just the nature of living in a polarized universe. So, you know, it doesn't mean we can't have polarity, but it means we have to look at how extreme is this polarity, how extreme is this decision. So is this sitting in a polarity that's going to find its harmony somewhere in here? Because nobody sits in the middle, right? We're all sort of dancing back and forth in polarities. But are we in one where there's a relationship between the two polarities, or are we in where we're no longer in relationship in the two polarities because we're at the opposite extremes?
Yes, you know, it reminds me.
Exist in that center point, you know, in relationship of polarities.
Yes. So one of my maxims, Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's lifelong business partner, one of my favorite quotes is, he said, take a simple idea and take it seriously. Take a simple idea, take it seriously, which I think is so, it's like the secret to success, pretty much with anything, whether it's a business or launching a movement. Take an idea and really take it seriously. Not lots of ideas, take an idea. And so I try to reduce the complexity of life down to really simple things I can remember. And one is a rule is if you're not getting the results you want, change what you're doing, right? Which is in a sense a polarity thing, right? But people don't. What they do is they double down on what they're already doing. It's not a polarity thing. They amp up, right? It does. So if you're trying to improve your, I don't know, your 10K time, you know, and you're training and your time isn't improving, most people, they train more. Maybe what you should do is train less, do something different. And it doesn't matter whether it's in your, you know, your personal life or as an individual or your professional life or in a business or in the country. If you're not getting the results you want, change what you're doing. And a step in the opposite direction is usually a good starting point, right? Your thing about polarities.
Yep.
Right? Instead of moving forward, try moving backwards.
Yeah. Trying to move. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think this is really interesting. I also feel like since we're here, can we just bring up real quick that there's another book that you have there that's Warren and Charlie's Bedtime Stories. Do I have the title right? Or Charlie, Warren
yeah.
and Charlie.
So when I'll talk about it, it's kind of, so that's Warren and Charlie's Bedtime Story, which seems like a kid's book, and I meant it to seem like a kid's book, but it's I took everything that Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger ever said about investing and distilled the core philosophy of it and put it into a story, kind of like Ferris Bueller's Day Off. But the hero of the story is a 12-year-old, and I have the 12-year-old Billy Smith derive everything that Munger and Buffett ever said from basic principles. And the thing about investing, this is so I have the front cover of the book. You'll see it's a baseball being pitched at a boy, and you see a little strike zone there. I don't know if you see that. And so Buffett, again, it sounds like I'm talking about investing. I am, and I'm talking about more than investing. So Buffett said the stock market is like a pitching machine, and all day long it pitches you stocks, right? Twitter at $33.22, right? And you can swing at it or you can let it go by. And most of the time you should let them go by, because most of the time they're not worth swinging at, right? General Motors at $14.19, whatever. Gold at, 1,300 and whatever dollars. And so he was talking about the stocks being pitched at you. Think of them as invitations. Mm-hmm. And you can either swing at them or not. And so what they said is that you should actually swing at very few. In baseball, they call them fat pitches, right? It's just such an easy pitch, and you just swing for the fences. And the same principles that Buffett and Munger have articulated over their, lives, are applicable to our lives, because you could invest money, but in life we invest our time, our most precious resource, right? And so if you view people as invitations, or throughout the day, there are any number of pitches, how we spend our time. I could spend it with this person. I could spend it talking with you.
Yep.
Or I could spend it napping, or listening to music, or reading roomy poetry, or whatever. And to be sure about how we're investing our time, which is the most precious resource, because the opportunity cost of misspent time, especially in today's world, is incalculable. So to be aware of what's being pitched at us every day, and most of the time, let them go by.
I want to put this out there just so people can find it. There's a website that you have up that's IamAdamRobinson.com.
Mhm.
I am adamrobinson.com, and you can go there, and actually they can pre-order the book, I believe, and all the proceeds are being donated, right?
Donated to charity because so Warren, people don't know this, when Warren was 12 years old, so this is 1942,
Mm-hmm.
right? Depression, World War II. His father took him from Omaha to New York City.
Mm-hmm.
12-year-old Warren Buffett, and they visit the New York Stock Exchange. And afterwards, when they left, Buffett told his father, whom he revered, said, "Dad, one day I'm going to become the richest man in the world so that I can give it all away."
Mm-hmm.
So he's 89, Munger's 95, still go to work every day. And by God, he's delivered on the promise. He's given away like $100 billion.
Yep.
And so, there's a word that appears in almost every interview that Buffett has ever given. And the word is fun. He's had a blast. And in having a blast, he's going to give it all away. And it was never about the money. And so, I'm donating the profits, all the profits, because that's what Buffett has done, yeah, I think it's seek to maximize fun. We've got a country that's seeking to maximize growth, make things faster. Okay, how about fun? And really think about it. If the society were designed to maximize fun, everybody's fun, it'd be different. It'd be a different world we lived in.
Well, I know that you lean in to the world that way. I mean, I know that you smile easy, and you look for reasons to have fun, or places to connect where their joy may exist, just naturally. Is it do you think people can learn to do that have been so predisposed to?
Yeah. So whenever I experience a negative emotion,
Mm-hmm.
Anger, frustration, any negative emotion, it's a sign to me that my attention is misplaced. That's all. My attention always is in one of two places, either the task at hand, whatever I'm doing, or the person in front of me if I'm with other people. And so the learning to be, people say, "Oh, Adam, you're so positive. You're so like unrelentingly so." It's really a mindset, and a mindset to find the fun and opportunities in any given situation. And if there's a person in front of me, the connection, whatever fun and connection that I can have with the people around me. And I really don't see any point to live any other way. And so even if I encounter, say, someone negative, I don't stay negative for long, because I'm immediately pivoting away, looking for the fun and the opportunity and the connection or the fulfillment or the love in any given situation. Think of like I don't know, a cheetah, hunting for prey. It's not going to be distracted by anything. It's just looking for prey. And for me, I'm always on the hunt for the fun and the engagement in any given situation. And I'm not going to be distracted by a bird that catches, whoa, no, I'm not after the bird. And
so is that a place where stupidity can come for you at times, if you're focused on fun over there? Or do you ever get too focused on that you miss something that
no, because the playful state, I'm always playful. And
Yeah.
so the playful state is the powerful state. And I don't get attached to things. And remember, one of the factors for stupidity is intensely focusing on one thing. And when I say, in that sense, I'm not a predator, it's like going after that. That's what people do, right? They get fixated on an object or a goal, right? Which is an invitation to be stupid, because while you're focused on that goal, and I don't care what the goal is. By the way, the goal might even be doing something for someone else. But if I fixated on something, then I'm necessarily stupid about everything else, right? Because my attention is focused here, right? I get kind of tunnel vision. And if you add tunnel vision along with a couple of other factors like a sense of urgency, being outside your normal environment, you're now in the stupid zone. And so, so I think in there to be playful, and I think it's possible always to be playful. Churchill said that war is a game played with a smile. And if you can't smile, step aside. And, it's not to say he was a perfect human being, but he certainly dealt with England at, World War II, horrific times. And even in times like this, there's always joy to be found in any situation. I think it was either Henry Ford or Thomas Edison. One of them said, "There's a better way, find it." And for me, in any situation, there's joy, find it. Sometimes I have to be creative. Really, doesn't matter. If I walk into an elevator, before the door opens, I'm wondering what magic is going to happen when the door opens. And if it's empty, fine. When I get in, I'm wondering what's going to happen when the door opens next. And, you really have to stay alert and to your environment, because the way to think about it, I've said this before, I view the universe as like trying to punk me in a good way. And you have to be alert. You really have to be alert. The universe is offering any number of opportunities as long as you're alert to them. You really have to pay attention. Benjamin Disraeli said, the secret to success is to be ready for your opportunity when it comes, but you also have to spot it. And sometimes it's not always obvious what the opportunity is. And
well, I love this part because I know you to be somebody always looking for that sense of wonder, and always to be, I like that you use the word magic. What magic is on the other side? Because you really live from that place that you are living in a magical universe and in a magical world. And I know that that's had direct impact in your life in different ways. And I think of a story you once told me about stepping out at Macy's. I think you were with your mom and stepping out of Macy's and looking across the street. Is that right?
So,
and that started a really pivotal relationship in your life, I believe.
Well, so just to set it up, long story short, it was Easter Sunday, and I was 16 years old, and I was with my mother, and we were on the corner of 34th and 6th, and so I was diagonally across from Macy's, not on the corner of Macy's. So this is Easter Sunday, thousands of people going about their business, right? Easter Sunday. And I was with my mom, and again, long story short, at the time, my hero, one of my heroes was Bobby Fischer, the chess player. And at the time, this was before he won the world championship, and he was not a well-known, unless you were a chess player, you would not have recognized him, right? 2 years later, when he won the world championship, he was literally the most famous person on the planet. They said number 2 was Muhammad Ali, to give you an idea of how, what a celebrity he had become overnight. Anyway, I knew all of his games by heart. When I started to play chess, I studied one person's games, Bobby Fischer's. Like, imagine you want to become a songwriter and you only study John Lennon's songs. That's all you do. You don't study anybody else. You just John Lennon. That's it. And so I'm with my mother, and I was a little bit upset because we had just finished second place at the high school nationals. I was a little, because we should have won. And we did the next year, but that year we only finished second. And anyway, I'm with my mom on Easter Sunday, and out of the corner of my eye, in the crowd, I spot Bobby Fischer. And I turned to my mom and I said, Mom, I'm sorry. I know I said I would spend today with you, but that's Bobby. I will see you later. And I dashed through traffic, and because I thought I would lose him, but I might go into the subway there on 34th and 6th. And I ran up to him. And I said, Mr. Fischer. Mm-hmm. In because I knew all of his games by heart. Imagine knowing John Lennon's, all of his lyrics by heart, every single one, thousands of songs or whatever. And I knew every game he had played because I didn't try to memorize them, but I had, because it's all I studied. And I remember running up to him going, Mr. Fischer, 8 years ago at the US Championship, when you played Reshevsky, why did you play pawn to king, rook 3 on move 6? Like, he looks at me like I'm some alien, right? And first, how did I recognize him? And I run up to him, and the first thing I talk about a game he had played 8 years earlier. Like, who's this kid? He was 28 at the time. And 28. And he said, I'm going to lunch. Want to join me? So that spotting him like that I was primed, because first I'd only studied his games, and I said, Disraeli, be ready for your opportunity. Well, boom, somehow he materialized. And I say somehow because, in fact, I just figured out, I've had so many experiences like that in my life that only recently I learned how to make it happen. Like, you'd say, what are the odds that you would meet your hero on that corner that day? 100%. I don't mean on that corner, but it was 100% that I was going to meet him, for sure. And I only learned the secret in February of this year. Like, I only dot connected and realized the secret to that. And the secret to making your heart's ambitions happen. By the way, I wasn't expecting to meet him. I wasn't. Like, he was a recluse. And
he stayed your friend for a long time. Your mentor.
Yeah, it was my mentor. It was like, this was 2 years before he won the world championship. Yeah. And I got to spend time with him. And maybe he had a dozen friends in his whole life, and I was one of them. And
so what's that secret? Are you going to share that with us?
Yeah. So the secret, I'm going to start with so I'm going to invite everyone, I mentioned this before, to start with the movie Slumdog Millionaire. And so Slumdog Millionaire is a lot of people saw it. It came out, I don't know, like 11, 12 years ago. And it's worth watching because it actually reveals the secret in that movie. And if you notice, by the way, I apologize, there's vacuum cleaning outside my apartment.
Oh, is that what we're hearing? I thought it was horns.
Yeah. I'm
so predisposed to New York City that I was thinking I was hearing horns.
Oh, that's so funny. And, many years ago, I was in LA. I was in Santa Monica in a hotel on my birthday, and wondering what to do. Is Saturday morning, and my hotel, coffee and eating breakfast in my hotel room started to vibrate and shake. And my first thought was, I'll be damned, I didn't know they had subways in Santa Monica. It was an earthquake. It was the aftershock of the 93, lasted for 30 seconds. It was terrifying. So I'm in LA. So the secret is this. One is to have a pure intention. To stay locked on something that you hold in your heart and you want. and you know very well. And then to assume, and again, if you watch Slumdog Millionaire, this plays out, to be aware of what you notice, because along the way, God or the universe will be giving you gold coins. Like think of video game, gold coins, but you're not going to know what the gold coins are. Right? Like, why was I on that corner walking towards Central Park? But oh, forgot to mention, at the time, I lived in Illinois. I wasn't supposed to be on that corner. Like, walking up to Central Park what was I doing there? What was Fisher doing? And how out of thousands of people did I spot him? Yeah. Right? And so noticing is really key. Again, to go back to Benjamin Disraeli, to be ready for your opportunity when it arises. That's the right. And to be ready, you have to spot it. It's so key, because it may not be apparent. And I give you an instance of this. This is where I dot connected in London. So I was in London, and this is in January, late January, and I had a date. She wanted to go to this really trendy restaurant, and we didn't have reservations. And it's the kind of place it'd take weeks to get a reservation. And it was a Saturday night. Just no way are we going to get in. She said, well, let's try. So we go, and she asks, and there's no way. They say, sorry. It's like, in a month you could. And there's a mob of people trying to get in. And I said, let me try. So I go up to the hostess station, and the hostess, I just smile. And just smile. There are people like clamoring to get in, like we have a reservation, it's late. Anyway, and people trying to get in, slipping them 20-pound, 50-pound notes, trying to get in. And I just smiled, and she looks up and goes, yes. I didn't say anything, I just smiled. That's all I did. She said, do you have a reservation? And I said, no, I don't. I didn't ask. I didn't say a damn thing. I just said, no, I don't. Because everyone was like asking her for things. And really, I just thought, I'm just going to connect with her. And she goes, wait right here. And she runs into the restaurant. She comes back out. She goes, I got a table for you too.
Wow.
And she sat us. Now, that's not the story. This is the beginning of the story. So we're leaving the restaurant, and I go up to the hostess station. It's now the end of the seating. It's kind of quiet. Two hostesses there, and I go up to her and I say, what's your name? And she said, I'm not going to say, because I'm just going to give it, Samantha. And I said, Samantha, thank you so much. She said, you're so welcome. I said, that was really nice. I said, I'm going to give you a surprise tomorrow. She said, really? I said, yes, I am. I'm going to give you a surprise. What I wanted to do was give her a copy of my book, which Invitation to the Great Game. It's not out. Anyway, she was so nice. She said, what's the surprise? I said, I can't tell you. It wouldn't be a surprise. And she turns to her other hostesses, again, making up names. Annabelle is going to give me a surprise. She said, I wonder what it is. I said, well, you just have to find out. Anyway, the next day, I put the book in my shoulder bag and fully intended to come over and drop it off. I didn't. I was too busy. London is really sprawling. It's really hard to get around. Anyway, I didn't get a chance. And the next day, carried it around with me, didn't get a chance. In fact, every day that week, I didn't get a chance. And I'm really bummed with myself because I had said I would drop it off. She was very excited, and I didn't follow through. It's my way of saying thank you. And anyway, I'm now leaving London. It's late January. I'm leaving London, and I'm kind of bummed with myself. But I said, that's okay. I'm going to be back in a few weeks. I have to give a talk in mid-February. I'll drop it off then. So I come back in mid-February, 3 weeks later, and every day I carry the book with me, but I'm even busier than the first trip. I don't get a chance to. It's now Friday, 5 o'clock, and in a few hours I'm going to leave London. And I'd had a tea with a friend of mine, colleague in Mayfair, and somehow wandered over to Piccadilly Circus, which is a zoo. People think traditional London, like, you know, pictures of London, Piccadilly Circus, a zoo. It's this roundabout with, you know, big double deckers and, you know, mass confusion of people and cars and buses. And Friday at 5 o'clock. And I'm, you know, I don't even know what I'm doing there. I don't like crowds. And I'm pissed with myself because I'm leaving in a few hours and I didn't get a chance to drop off the book. And I don't know when I'm going to be back in London. And anyway, I notice about 50 yards away, I notice an old man, right? Thousands of people, Piccadilly Circus, 5 o'clock, offices spilling out. Everyone's excited for the weekend, going shopping or whatever, dancing. And I noticed an old guy. And he clearly was an immigrant trying to sell. He was trying to stop people and sell them something or give them something. He was trying to stop people and no one was stopping. Nobody. But then I noticed someone did. A very tall woman who stopped, and I could tell from behind, very elegantly dressed. And I not only stopped, but like leaned in, didn't like just give him £5 and like, okay, here. But was like listening. And I thought, wow, that's really special. I want to see this play out. So I jog over kind of quickly because I don't know how long it's going to last, this little vignette, right? There a million things that could have caught my eye, but that did. Anyway, I jog over and I look and I go, Samantha? And she looks at me and goes, ah!
Wow.
Yeah. Now, what are the odds? So she said, how did you find me? I said, well, I have to tell you the whole story. Let's have tea. We did. Anyway, she said, you know, Adam, I got to tell you, I don't know why I got off at Piccadilly Circus. It was a stop before I was supposed to get off. I just got off the underground. And I thought, oh man, what am I doing in Piccadilly Circus? I said, same thing.
Wow.
Now, and she said also, by the way, if you'd come the next day to give me the book, I wasn't there. I was fired.
Oh, wow.
So was the other hostess. If I'd shown up the next day with the book, she wouldn't have been there. And then I couldn't have said, well, oh, but Annabelle, she wasn't there either. Some other people were fired. They just let go of a bunch of people. By the way, if she had been there and I'd given the book, I wouldn't have learned anything.
Yeah.
Because just like Fisher, so all I wanted to do was deliver a book. And same thing, you have to notice your environment. And by the way, notice what caught my attention. It was an act of human kindness.
Yeah, it was the act of human kindness. I did notice that.
And I ran over because I wanted to see that. That's it. Mind you, I had to pack and leave for New York in a few hours. I had a million things on my mind. But out of all of that, it was like a tap on my shoulder or a whisper in my ear. I don't even know what, but I felt I got to go there and see that. I don't even know why. And so just like, why did I look over there? You know, when I saw Fisher, and like, why? And when I look at other things that have happened in my life, they all happen in the same way, that you're alert to the possibilities around you. And to assume that as long as you stay true to something, I had no agenda other than giving her the book because I said I would. That's it. I could have mailed it because I said I was going to bring it. Could have mailed it, could have done any number of things, had it messengered, but I didn't because I said, it's like my word. I said I was going to do it. And if you watch Slumdog Millionaire, the same thing. Really, everyone, Slumdog Millionaire should be required viewing. And the key thing to watch, to deconstruct, watch what Jamal notices in every experience. That's the key. You got to notice what he notices.
I've seen it, but I'm going to watch it again.
Because you got to notice, that's really the key thing. That's the secret. What he notices and why.
So we have to wrap up soon, but I want to take some time to wrap around this kindness thing and really with where we're going. You know, we're in such a polarized world right now. I mean, obviously we have this election coming up. We have a polarizing president and polarizing politics across the board. And we also have a lot of polarization and, you know, people coming out. Do they wear the mask? Don't they wear the mask? You know, all of this stuff, you know, it's been so intense. And we haven't even, you know, we didn't even touch on Black Lives Matter tonight, which, you know, it's been such an interesting, but what I want to wrap around is how we lean in. You know, how do we take some, you know, you've talked about these different things. You've talked about, you know, these questions. We've talked a little bit about, we didn't even talk that much about it, but, you know, the financial markets and,
oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, so let me talk about
how do we, stay connected. Go ahead. You can.
Okay. So it's so funny you say that because, immediately when it happened, I meditated for the better part of a week on what can I do to change the dynamic. And there were several things that impressed me about that incident. George Floyd. One is that someone was not just that an act of evil, just someone died, but that people's impulse was to photograph it, not to stop it. It's very interesting. Remember I said before about, hold on, just think about that. Think if the cop had a kitten in his hands and was strangling the kitten. A crowd would have done something. There, by the way, there was I believe, pretty sure, 90%, 95% sure, there was an EMT, somebody said, actually, a woman said, he can't breathe. You're actually killing him. Now, but, you know, and by the way, think of the courage that it took for her to do that. And yet, nobody mobilized to stop it. They photographed it. Well, thanks. That's a lot of good. And by the way, think about that. The instinct of a lot of people is to photograph a crime rather than what can we do to stop it, right? I'm not, you know, what's it called? Armchair quarterbacking, right? After a football game going, well, I could have done things differently. But I actually meditated about that. Like how can we train citizens for witnessing a crime or anything, something they want to stop, and they are mobilized to stop it rather than video it? Because that's really it's not complicit, but the instinct really of a lot of people is just, oh, video. Then you get 20 people videoing it, the outrage, but not stopping it. And I realize they're cops. But if I'd seen that.
Well, and I was going to say, there were people that were yelling at the cops. And there were a lot
No, but that's not enough. Yelling is not enough.
Right.
That doesn't do it. I spent a week and I'm still thinking about it. Right. Yep. And people, so here, for example, because Black Lives Matter, what can we do? Not to show support. Like, okay, that's nice. Don't mean to dismiss that.
Right.
But it's not going to change things. Let's look at situations. What do we want to change? Well, we want to change in a very specific way situations when police encounter certain situations that they act differently, right? There's that, right? So,
Absolutely.
right, one, that'd be one. Another would be that people who are witnessing something that they have, that we train them like with cues to respond in a certain way, to stop it, not to video it or to shout, because that, well, thanks so much, didn't do anything, right? And so there, and by the way, I don't even think it would be that hard to devise ways human beings could mobilize in a situation. Now, by the way, with cops with guns, whoa, that's a very dangerous situation.
Yes.
And so how can that situation be diffused by people and actually stop it, right? And I'm sure there are creative ways to do that. This reminds me, I think it was in 1964. There's a famous case of Kitty Genovese. Do you know the story? About the young woman, I think she was around 30, 7 o'clock at night in Queens, coming back, Kew Gardens, coming back home, and she was murdered. And she was shouting for her life. And there were many people that heard her shouts and could tell from the nature of the shouts, she's being murdered. No one did anything. It was a famous case. And so even there, sociologists have studied that case, right? Like, why do people in groups, remember stupidity, one of the factors, if you're in the presence of a group, one of the problems with groupthink is everyone looks around at what everyone else is doing. And if everyone's shouting, then I'll shout. Or if everyone's videoing, maybe I'll video, right? And the problem is that it's not getting the results you want. Change what you're doing. And I am sure that there are things that can be done to diffuse physically dangerous situations in real time, but you got to be trained to do it. So there's one aspect of that, again, because Black Lives Matter, is police, all, not just police, you know, National Guard. If people look up Kent State, 1970, college kids were just demonstrating anti-war.
All
Right?
government authoritarian people, all government empowered authoritarians.
Well, especially those with weapons. Right? So in 1970, Kent State in Ohio, college kids were demonstrating peacefully about the war in Vietnam. And the president of the college called the National Guard in. Well, if you call a National Guard, already they are predisposed. This has got to be serious. If you're calling us, they come with their weapons ready, right? They don't come to observe.
Right.
And they had the guns pointed at the kids, teenagers. And one of the guns of the National Guard went off. Of course, that was predictable. When the college president called the National Guard, that was predictable. And the gun went off. And then all the National Guard thought, oh my gosh, we're being fired upon. And they started shooting indiscriminately at the college kids who were running away for their lives. 4 kids died. Shot in the back as they were running away. And so in situations like this, you know, that they invite, again, stupidity. And you know, again, you've got authority figures and authority figures with weapons. Like, wow. So again, because Black Lives Matter, like there's a hashtag, not Black Lives Matter, but because Black Lives Matter, then what, right? What are we going to do differently? We're not doing things differently. It's going to stay the same, right? And so that's what we need to devise. And you think about the equations there. You either change the response of the police, or you change the response of the people who are observing and are in a position, sometimes anyway, to do something to stop it. So
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get distracted, but somebody asked a really interesting question, which
Sure.
I thought was interesting here, which is, what literature have you most often gifted that's not your own? It was an interesting question that popped up.
You know, it's so funny. Tim Ferriss tried to pin me down on that, like he was relentless. And I said, really, it depends on the individual. Really, because I give gifts, like a gift I would give you,
Right.
would be different from one I would give to one of my other dear hearts. It would just be different. So it really depends. It's so much. He really kept trying to pin me down on that. You know,
It's funny because I do think in one way it's telling of the person what they would give, right? But the other factor is I would know that about you, that I know how you are about gifts, that you literally tune into people, you know, and really look at who they are and what you might give. You really got to think around them, not you. So
wait, I wrote this. I wrote this for the public, but I wrote it to give as a Christmas present for Buffett this year. Yeah. I think that's the kind of gift I give. I wrote him a book. So I don't know if there's any one book that I would, you know.
Well, you told us what movie to watch. What piece of literature would you say we should all be reading right now?
You know.
How about that one?
Well, Emerson's essays are fantastic. Ralph Waldo Emerson, and almost each line is a gem of wisdom. Each line. Rumi poetry. Rumi's great. Those are two. Like, really, if I were pressed, I would say Rumi or Emerson. It's interesting. I go to poets.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting too.
Yeah, I like
the choice.
Yeah, but Emerson, though, his essays, they're written, although he was a poet.
Yeah, both of them really address the consciousness of individuals.
Yes, the heart. At the end of the day, you're left with your feelings. And one of the things about the modern world is we created it with our head, with logic. Mm-hmm. And logic will tell us how to do things. Like, we've gotten really good at technology. Meanwhile, we're totally divorced from our hearts. And at the end of the day, we're left with our feelings and our hearts. And, you know, I guess I want to leave with one thing to be sure is everyone needs to work on his or her perfect day. Like, it's so important to just pick up a journal, pick a date in the future. I don't know, a couple years ahead, but a specific date, and describe that day, a specific day. I don't know, so Monday, September 19th, 2022. I don't know, pick a date and describe your day from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep. Every detail. When you look out the window, what do you see? And why? Who's in bed with you? By the way, maybe the person is cooking you breakfast. Maybe the person's not in bed with you already, or meditating. But the key thing is to describe every detail and the why of it. So if you say you look out the window and you see the ocean, then you state in your, I love being near water. Like, whatever it is, start with your perfect day. And because this world is so surreal that you really got to anchor on your perfect day, and then which people and which opportunities can fit into that perfect day. I think that's really key. Start with your perfect day.
As a way to orient people around what brings them joy?
Yeah. Oh, your perfect day. It's your perfect day. And by the way, the punchline is it's your everyday. How have you structured your life so when you walk past the couch, describe the couch? Like why have you chosen that couch, right? Because I like curling up and reading books, or I like napping on my couch, whatever it is, every detail. Who's the first phone call of the day? You know, who do you eat dinner with and why? Every detail. and the why behind it. And then, you know, it gets back to what I said earlier about opportunities and, you know, life, every moment, this moment right now, an hour from now is an invitation to do any number of things. Every moment is an invitation, and every person that you meet, an invitation. And to dance with or not. You can decline the invitation, or you can counter invite. And but that's so important. Start with your perfect day. In this crazy world, got to get centered.
I love so much that you said tonight, and that we came there. I really also, you know, one of the most important things I've got out of everything you're talking about is that we've constructed a world, you know, out of, you know, answering the question of consumerism or answering the wrong questions, not just that question, but many of the wrong questions, and from logic, and that we need to move our questions towards the heart, and how do we feed the human heart and humanity?
Yeah.
And so what I guess I would take from what you've said tonight is that's what we need to do as individuals, is to start doing that for ourselves, which is like describing this perfect day, and begin to build our life around our heart. And that's how we begin to lean in. It's one of the ways that we can begin to lean in.
Yes.
Now.
And then the questions you ask is, and any given opportunity, any given invitation is this going to get me closer to my perfect day or not? Yeah. And if it is, great. Okay, let's do that. Yes.
I love that. Adam, you have three books that are all not yet quite available, although at least Warren and Charlie.
The next couple of months, they will be.
So my question is, how do people stay aware so that they know when they're available? Because I really, by the way, I got to tell you, you should read all three. The How Not to Be Stupid, The Great Game, The Invitation to the Great Game is so much fun and so full of wisdom, but it's such a joyful book to read. And wow, Warren and Charlie's Adventures is also so smart, but really also very playful and fun. It really is you, and yet it's them. You know, so it's a nice marriage there in that book.
Yeah,
so how do people stay up, and how do they know when these things are available?
So I Am Adam Robinson is my website, it's my Twitter, it's my Instagram, you know, and they'll all be available in the next, well, Warren and Charlie's Bedtime Story, like in a couple of weeks. There's kind of already a soft launch for it. And
yeah, that's already got pre-orders on it. So the other books will come up and be listed on
the next couple months. Yeah.
On the same website.
I mean, that's like, because this writing thing is it's a side thing. I'm you know, monitoring global markets, you know, launching a financial company and stuff. Like there are a bunch of things I'm also doing. So the writing is like got to fit it in.
Well, it's a good side thing. It's a good side thing, and I can't wait till the books are out there in the world. Thank you so much, Adam, for all your time tonight and for being here.
Oh, thank you. Just the best, Asa. We had so much fun.
We did, and as always, I love spending time with you. So thank you for being here. And everybody, you know, I know it was a long show. Thanks for sticking it out. Obviously, it was well worth it with Adam on board. So, Adam, have a great night.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.